Hello and welcome to the Friday show. I'm Ray Paulick, joined by Paulick Report news editor Chelsea Hackbarth. Welcome, Chelsea. We are brought to you, as always, by Woodbine. Recently gave the date for the 2024 Kings Plate. That's August 17th. Save the date on that. Also, Woodbine announced that they're going to be doing some work on the E.P. Taylor turf course, not next year, but the year after, adding some drainage, which I think will allow them to run a little bit more turf racing later in the year. We're down to the last 3 weekends of racing at Woodbine. Closing date is December 17, and this Sunday is the 1.5 mile valedictory stakes on the Tapeta course. So last week, Chelsea, Joe and I gave out the Turkey Awards. I'm sorry you didn't win any this year, but
we'll have to work a little harder next year.
You were close on that one. Let's do something different this year. Let's move forward and look, instead of looking back a year, which we did with the Turkey Awards, let's look ahead a year and maybe put together a Christmas wish list or something, things that we would like to see happen in horse racing in the coming year and beyond, if possible. Does that sound all right?
Sure.
Like we haven't discussed this before, right?
Never, ever. I have, but here's my twist. You ready? One thing that's realistic, and one totally outside the realm of possibility thing.
Well, almost all of my suggestions are outside the realm of possibility.
Now you have to come up with the most realistic one.
So I hadn't thought of that. So I'm going to go first, and this is timely because in a couple of weeks, the Graded Stakes Committee will be sitting down with their hundreds and hundreds of binders full of data that they'll bury their heads into and decide whether or not they should make this grade 3 race a grade 2 or drop it to listed. And does this race really deserve to be grade 1 and so on and so forth. And my wish is that the Graded Stakes Committee just once will put the binders aside and have a discussion about, are we doing what's good for the breed? Because my opinion is no. My opinion is that the Graded Stakes Committee has gone off the rails, and it's been a long time that they've been off the rails, handing out way too many grade 1 races restricted to 3-year-olds and 2-year-olds, and way too many grade 1 races that are for sprinters. If you may have read this from me before, there used to be one grade 1 sprint before the Breeders' Cup. And now we have something like, 16 grade 1 sprints for non-2-year-olds. And what we're doing is we're encouraging breeders to retire sprinters and retire 2 or 3-year-olds early. And we're ending up with, I think, a breed that is producing horses that aren't as sound and that have no stamina. So, I hope that they look at this and say, okay, should we really have all these grade 1 races leading up to the Breeders' Cup? The Hopeful, Del Mar Futurity, whatever. The Champagne is, I think, that's before the Breeders' Cup too. Should the Breeders' Cup be the only grade 1 races for 2-year-olds? I say yes. And then looking at 3-year-olds, should the Woody Stevens, a grade 1 race on Belmont Day, should it be a grade 1 race, a 7 furlong race? There's a grade 1 race going 7 furlongs at Churchill Downs. There's another one at Saratoga. All these races restricted to 3-year-olds that are grade 1 and their sprints are not good for the breed. And I know this is not going to be a popular statement with stallion farms, but that's just my opinion. So I'm hoping the Graded Stakes Committee will set aside all the stuff they've done in the past and just kind of look at it and say, okay, we should be helping the breed here. Let's make a decision that's going to be good for the long-term interest of the thoroughbred. So I'm off the soapbox.
That's your outside the realm of possibility answer then.
I can always hope.
Okay. In a similar spirit, my outside the realm of possibility answer, albeit much shorter, that I would like to see fewer complaints about HISA and more people asking what they can do to help.
Do you want me to get my pom-poms and start waiting for HISA? I've been accused of being a HISA cheerleader. And in fact,
Do you have pom-poms? Are they sparkly? I have so many questions.
Yeah, they're from high school. They're purple and gold. They're a little worn out by now,
Ooh,
actually.
exciting, I think. Also, questions I don't want answered. Continue.
Yeah. So, I've been an advocate not for HISA because HISA didn't exist until a couple of years ago, but for exactly what HISA is trying to do, which is establish national rules for integrity and safety, and do a better job. Look at some of these state commissions. I mean, Jorge Navarro and Jason Service were given carte blanche to operate however they wanted to in New Jersey. It was ridiculous. And these goofballs from the HBPA that want to go back to that system should have their heads examined. To go back to a state-by-state regulatory system will be the death knell for horse racing. I guarantee it.
No argument here, but no. Like I said, that's my outside the realm of possibility wish, because people are going to complain even if there's nothing to really complain about. But anyway.
All right. Well, so this is one that you actually brought up with me, and it was very timely, and I think it's very realistic. And that's
we do have a realistic thing. It's not Turkey Award. It's not.
Well, it's actually your idea.
Okay. Well, I mean, obviously.
So I'm gonna tell the people what your idea is, and that is to make horse racing safer for the horses and the jockeys. And how do we do this, Chelsea?
I was hoping you were gonna not just leave me with that nebulous statement like "make it safer, everybody's happy, yay!" with your pom poms. No, it's the sensors, the stride safe sensors, or the inertial sensors in the saddle cloths. I really think that we have proven that we can't find a reason for these breakdowns. And now HISA just this week came out with another report that said, well, there's no one reason horses at Laurel Park were breaking down. Earlier this year, they said there was no one reason horses at Churchill Downs were breaking down. Great. Let's get more data. Let's figure out why. So in my opinion, I think that science and the sensors are the way that we solve that problem.
Yeah, this is not just a horse racing industry issue. I learned that the NFL has, I didn't know this until just recently, the NFL has sensors placed on their players, on their pads. I thought it was on their helmets, but then I read it was in their mouth guard that they wear, which I guess is part of the helmet.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And the initial reports are that the data that they're getting is helping reduce lower limb injuries in players, which is exactly what we're trying to accomplish in horse racing. And just for a second, explain, because you've done some stories on Stride Safe, and there's another company that also produces this wearable technology, which is the term that is being used now. Can you explain exactly how it works?
Without getting overly technical, sure. Right. Basically, it's just a little chip that sits in the saddle cloth, and it creates a pattern of data for every horse that it's on, and it compares that horse's motion over the course of a high-speed workout or a race to two different patterns. It compares it to the overall pattern of the thoroughbred breed, or for that particular racetrack or race season, whatever. And it also compares it to the horse's average, that horse's average. So if you see significant deviations either from the individual horse's average or from the breed average, then you know that something is not quite right. Even if, the state veterinarian eye or the trainer's eye or the jockey, none of them are picking up on it. Something's not quite right. It creates a warning system of sorts. It's not in real time, which is something that we could work on if we had a little more funding with this, but at least it would be able to tell you, 2 races ahead of time where the horse is going to break down. It can tell you, hey, something's not right. You need to look into this further.
So I'm kind of burying the lead here a little bit, but
you would not do that.
Earlier this week, I went to the conference or the convention of the American Association of Equine Practitioners, and their racing committee had a meeting at which this was the entire focus, the wearable technology. And unbeknownst to me, I had not known about this, but they had a late September meeting, I think in Lexington, a forum where it was discussed, and they came out of it with specific suggestions on how the technology should be used, and recommendations. And they're talking about putting this technology on every horse for every race and every timed workout, that a high-speed workout that the horse has. And eventually they would like to put it on the horse when they gallop, so that for each horse they can have a baseline reading. And this is an enormous project, and I'm concerned about it, frankly, because racing doesn't have the best technology, at least on the racetrack side. We can't even time races properly after all these years. We have tote issues, we have all kinds of problems. So to think that we're going to have tens of thousands of horses with daily readings of their stride, and is it in the norm? Is there an aberration here or there? I'm skeptical, but I'm very, very hopeful, because to a person at this racing committee meeting, the veterinarians all believed that this was a game-changing technology that really can make a difference. Having said that, several of the vets said we can't ignore all of the things we do now, the examinations, the X-rays, the scans, but this is a tremendous tool that will pinpoint horses that are at risk, that could then further have the vets do their examinations and do some of the PET scans and things that can maybe show exactly what's wrong. But this is a really big deal.
I couldn't agree more, and I'm excited that it's being recognized still in racing, but at the top levels of racing, as something that's going to be important for our future if we would like to have one. That this is how we get there. I think it's scalable. So we've seen projects done at NIRA facilities and at Churchill Downs where the horses all wore sensors during their races exclusively. So that's, I think, where we start. You get some of the bigger tracks done first. They're wearing them just during races. Then you get the rest of the tracks involved. Then you figure out how to go to morning workouts. From there, you expand to gallops. I think that one of the problems they're having is that the company, Stride Safe, I believe, is not ready to scale to 10,000 horses today. But I think we could do, there's 100 or so on a race day at a big racetrack. I think we can get that going pretty quickly.
Yeah, the AAEP has put out a request for proposals due in February for companies that are interested, including Stride Safe. And it's a big ask to go from 100 horses to 20,000 horses, and to manufacture the hardware that's involved, and to build a database. And that's
we're so good at databases in this industry. We are.
That's really what concerns me, is the inability of the industry to compile data that can talk to other data. And like one of the things that was brought up at the meeting was, well, what if a trainer puts it on the wrong horse, purposely or by accident? Well, they said, well, the hope is that the microchips, or the chip that goes in the saddle, will read the microchip that's on the horse, since all horses are now chipped, and that way, you can't make that mistake, or it will recognize that it's a mistake. Things like that concern me, because so far the industry has not done well with data.
I do think there are ways around that. If you want to have a recorded workout, you have to stop at the gap on the way and scan your chip, scan your microchip in the horse, scan your chip in the saddle cloth. There you go. Problem solved. But that does require putting a scanner and an honest person to hold the scanner on the gap of every racetrack. So there's, there are certainly issues that will come up, but I do think that this is how we move forward.
And one of the big questions is, who's going to pay for this? And
We are.
well, there were comments made that there are some alphabet soup groups, which is, we have 20 or 30, I won't list them all, that are willing to pay for it. And from my experience, the only groups that ever stand up and say, hey, this is a good initiative, we're going to support it, there's basically three, I think, and that's Keeneland, the Jockey Club, and Breeders' Cup. They're the three organizations that have a lot of money, that have a vested interest in safety. And, there are other companies, Churchill Downs being one, that has a lot of money, but because they're publicly traded, their loyalties are with shareholders, not necessarily to the horses or racing. So
how easy would it be for Breeders' Cup to say every track that wants to host a challenge race, you have to put a microchip in your saddle towels?
Well, I believe this is something that HISA could probably put into its regulations, and that would solve the problem for everybody except Louisiana and West Virginia, at least until this is all, till the HISA challenges are resolved in court. So
once again,
could do that, or HISA could do that,
outside the realm of possibility, I think.
So this is a real thing, and it's, I don't want to say it's moving forward at warp speed, because nothing really seems to happen at warp speed in horse racing. But I was really encouraged by the range of support that this had from veterinarians. A lot of old time vets who you maybe would think say, oh, this technology is nonsense. All I need to do is look at the horse and palpate it and do all these things, and that we learned to do in vet school. But the fact that they're embracing this technology, to me, is very significant.
I agree. I think the piece that's being missed is part of what you talked about, the database building and the way that we get these things talking to each other. I think that we're going to have to put a bigger investment into our data infrastructure than we have in the past. And I think that needs to be a part of this focus, because we're talking about these sensors take readings, multiple readings per second, and you want to put them on 20,000 horses across the nation, I'm sorry, and per second, and they're doing 50-second works. Okay, well, now you've got all this data, and that was just one work for one horse for one day, and they work almost every week, and then they run the other weeks that they're not working. It's a significant amount of data, and we need to be able to use it appropriately. So I don't know if we need to talk to Jeff Bezos. I don't know if we need to talk to who we need to talk to. I know it's not me. I don't have the experience to do this, but I know that we need to talk to people smarter than me about how to use this data. And I think Lisa Lazarus has been one of the big champions for that, actually, using the data that we have and using the data that we're going to create. Using Amazon Web Services, I believe, was one of the announcements earlier this year. Yeah. That they're doing big data stuff with the information they already have.
One of the things you mentioned was that it's not in real time, the data collection. But one of the veterinarians at the racing committee meeting said it could be, and he said I could foresee a day when you have an official monitoring all of the horses in a race. And if it looks like one of the horses took the
proverbial bad step,
not visually, but showing up in the data, that official could communicate to the jockey, because we do have communication tools that are available and will be available, to pull the horse up before it suffers an injury. I mean, that's the extreme. But when you start thinking outside the box, that's something that could happen, which brings in a whole different set of questions because of the nature of the game, because it's gambling. We're betting on these horses, and if you have an official saying you got to pull this horse out of the race, not everybody's going to be happy.
Well, everybody loves the stewards, and the stewards make the right call all the time. So This will be fine. Everything's fine.
All right. Well, that talking about things that have probably never happened, having real-time data where somebody can predict an injury before it happens, that's probably never going to happen, but we can always hope.
I think we can get that fatality number a heck of a lot closer to 0 than any other form of prevention that I've seen enacted for the past 8 years that I've worked for you.
Through the wearable technology.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, wow, that's a big statement. Well, hey, Chelsea, thanks so much. Really appreciate your thoughts on this. And
I want to see your pom-poms next time we do the Friday show together.
It's okay. I'll round them up for you. But anyways, I hope this is something that sooner rather than later we're gonna start seeing at the racetracks. So,
fingers crossed.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for the Friday show. Thanks to Woodbine for their sponsorship, and we will see you next week.
Support award-winning independent horse industry journalism and become a Paulick Report insider on Patreon. For as little as $5 a month, insiders get access to exclusive Q&As with Paulick Report staff, insight behind our editorial process, exclusive opinions and on-site analysis, Paulick Report merch, and more. This is not a paywall. The website you know and love will always be the same. But if you want more, and you want to make our coverage even better, visit patreon.com/Paulick Report and become a Paulick Report insider today.